15 months after she vanished, a billionaire cowboy gets a letter. "Sir, you were named as the father." Born into wealth, he had inherited not just a sprawling ranch in Texas, but also the kind of influence and power most people could only dream of. By his mid-30s, he had built a life that seemed perfect from the outside. Success, respect, and a deep love with Emily, the woman who had captured his heart years ago. She was smart, kind, and had a gentle way of calming him when the pressures of his business world threatened to overwhelm him. Together, they had planned a future filled with love, family, and adventure. But life has a way of reminding even the strongest people that not everything can be controlled. One crisp autumn morning, Jackson woke to find Emily gone. At first, he thought it was some misunderstanding. Maybe she had gone out early for a walk or taken a short trip to clear her mind. But as the hours passed, the empty house and the silent phone told a different story. There was no note, no explanation, no trace of her anywhere. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. Jackson called her friends, checked hospitals, and even reached out to local authorities, but no one had seen her. Her car was still in the driveway, her keys on the counter, and her favorite coat hanging by the door. It was as if she had disappeared from her own life. Panic began to gnaw at him, a sharp contrast to the calm and composed image he had always projected. He was a man used to solving problems with money and influence, but this time, no amount of wealth could help him. The private investigators he hired, the search parties he sent out across the countryside, and the endless phone calls yielded nothing. Every lead ended in disappointment, and every passing day made the silence feel heavier. The media caught wind of her disappearance quickly. Tabloids ran stories about the billionaire cowboy and the missing woman, speculating wildly about what might have happened. Some said she had left him willingly, tired of the pressure and attention his wealth brought. Others hinted at foul play, and the rumors seemed endless. Jackson was forced to navigate the relentless attention while also managing his worry. He despised the intrusion, but there was no escaping the headlines or the whispers in his community. Even the neighbors who had once admired him now eyed him with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. Yet, despite the chaos, Jackson refused to give up hope. Every morning, he would wake and check the house, hoping to find a note or a message that might explain her disappearance. Every night, he would ride across his ranch, letting the wide-open fields and the quiet stars give him a sense of peace he couldn't find anywhere else. Those rides became his ritual, a way to process the fear and confusion that threatened to overwhelm him. Alone with the horses, the wind, and the endless horizon, he allowed himself to feel the deep ache of uncertainty and loss. His friends tried to console him, offering advice and support, but Jackson could not accept their words fully. He appreciated their concern, yet he felt something they could not understand, a sense of personal failure. He questioned himself constantly. Had he done something to drive her away? Had he missed signs, subtle hints that something was wrong? The questions haunted him relentlessly, each one twisting deeper into his mind as he tried to imagine what could have led Emily to vanish without a trace. Jackson's family also offered support, but their presence was complicated. While they loved him, their wealth and influence often made personal matters feel public. He had grown up learning to mask his emotions, to present a composed exterior no matter the turmoil inside. Yet now, no amount of training or practice could hide the raw fear and confusion he felt. The disappearance of someone he loved had stripped him down to his most vulnerable state. It was a feeling he could not buy, bribe, or command away. It was simply there, raw and consuming. As the days turned into weeks, Jackson's routine became dominated by the search for Emily. He spent hours on the phone with private investigators, reviewing reports and visiting potential leads. He flew across the state and neighboring areas, following every tip no matter how small. Each time a lead turned cold, A heavy sense of failure settled in, yet he refused to stop. The thought of giving up was unbearable. He could not imagine life without knowing where she was, why she had left, or if she was safe. The unknown was a constant companion, lurking in every corner of his mind. Even his work, which had once brought him joy, became a distraction he could barely tolerate. The ranch, which had been a symbol of his success and independence, now felt hollow. Horses wandered freely across the fields, but their beauty did little to soothe the emptiness he felt. Business deals, investments, and public appearances all seemed meaningless compared to the burning question that consumed him. Where was Emily? Jackson also began reflecting on their time together, replaying conversations and moments that once seemed ordinary. He remembered how she would laugh at his corny jokes, how she would tend to the garden with care, and how she had always been his confidant. Each memory was now tinged with sorrow, a reminder of what he had lost, or what he feared was lost forever. The thought that she might never return was unbearable, yet he clung to the possibility that somehow she would come back to him. Night after night, Jackson would sit in the quiet of his study, staring at the fire in the fireplace, hoping for some sign, some clue. He would read old letters, look at photographs, and even play the music she loved, as if the familiar notes could guide her back. Sleep became irregular, his mind constantly running through scenarios and what-ifs. Friends noticed his growing fatigue, but he brushed off their concern, driven by a determination that left little room for rest. As the first anniversary of her disappearance approached, Jackson felt the weight of the entire year pressing on him. 15 months had passed, and yet Emily's absence remained a gaping void. The town still whispered about the mysterious case, reporters occasionally visited, and the occasional stranger would offer unsolicited advice or speculation. But none of it mattered to Jackson. He only wanted answers, only wanted Emily safe. The world's opinions, its judgments, and its curiosity were insignificant compared to the truth he needed to uncover. Through it all, Jackson's character was tested. He had always been confident, commanding, and self-reliant. Now, he faced the limits of his power. Money could hire investigators, influence could open doors, but none of it could bring Emily home. This realization humbled him, forcing him to confront feelings he had rarely allowed himself to experience: vulnerability, fear, and helplessness. It was a lesson in the limits of control, a reminder that some forces in life were beyond even the wealthiest man's reach. And yet, despite the despair, Jackson never lost hope entirely. Somewhere deep inside, he held on to a belief that Emily's story was not finished, that there was a reason she had disappeared, and that eventually the truth would reveal itself. His love for her remained steadfast, a quiet flame that refused to be extinguished by time or uncertainty. He knew that the coming months, whether filled with relief or heartbreak, would shape the rest of his life in ways he could not yet imagine. In those long, quiet nights, riding across the ranch under the stars, Jackson would whisper her name into the wind, imagining that somehow, somewhere she might hear him. That simple act of hope, small and fragile, became the thread that kept him moving forward, despite the emptiness, despite the questions, despite the uncertainty. It was a reminder that some bonds cannot be broken, even by distance, silence, or fear. And so Jackson waited, searching, hoping, and preparing for the moment when Emily's story would intersect with his once more. He did not know when that moment would come or what form it would take, but he felt a quiet certainty that life had more to reveal, and that he would face it, whatever it was, with an open heart and unwavering determination. 15 months had passed since Emily disappeared, and the emptiness in Jackson Cole's life had only deepened. Each day felt like walking through a fog, where hope and despair intertwined in a way that left him exhausted. Though he had once believed that wealth could solve every problem, he now understood that there were situations even money could not fix. No matter how many investigators he hired, no matter how many flights he took across the state or neighboring states, Emily remained a mystery. Each lead seemed promising at first, only to collapse into disappointment, leaving him with nothing but frustration and grief. Jackson's days became a series of routines, designed to keep his mind busy yet never fully allowing him to forget. Early in the morning, before the sun painted the ranch in golden hues, he would saddle his favorite horse and ride across the sprawling fields. The wind brushing against his face, the rhythmic sound of hooves against the earth, and the familiar sense of hay and wild grass offered him a sense of peace he could not find indoors. It was during these rides that he allowed himself to think freely, without the pressure of meetings, calls, or media scrutiny. Yet, even in the quiet of the ranch, Emily's absence lingered, an invisible weight pressing against his chest. Every investigation Jackson had commissioned came with reports, photos, and interviews, but they all led to dead ends. He would sit in his office late at night, reading every detail, looking for a connection he might have missed. Sometimes he thought he saw a pattern, only for it to dissolve upon closer inspection. Each failure was a reminder of his helplessness, and each day without Emily felt like a tiny defeat. He began keeping a journal, writing down thoughts, observations, and possible scenarios. In that journal, he confessed fears he could never voice aloud. The worry that Emily had been hurt, that she had chosen to leave him permanently, or that he might never see her again. The media never let him forget the disappearance. Newspapers ran stories about the billionaire cowboy and his missing partner, speculating endlessly about why she had vanished. Social media added its own theories, some cruel, some sympathetic, and all invasive. Jackson had always managed public attention with poise, but now it felt like an additional burden. He often found himself wishing for privacy, for a world where he could grieve and search without the glare of curiosity. He avoided public appearances when possible, yet the town, the media, and even distant acquaintances seemed to follow him wherever he went. Their questions, no matter how politely phrased, reminded him daily of the void in his life. Despite these pressures, Jackson refused to give up hope. Friends and family urged him to move on, to accept that Emily might never return, but he could not imagine life without answers. He clung to the belief that she was alive somewhere, that circumstances had forced her to disappear, and that eventually the truth would surface. Each morning, he rose with a determination that surprised even him. He met with investigators, followed leads, and traveled to places suggested by tips or rumors. Every trip, every effort was driven by a mixture of desperation and love, and though many ended in frustration, Jackson never allowed the failures to extinguish the flame of hope inside him. Some days, Jackson felt closer to despair than ever. The uncertainty gnawed at him, turning moments of quiet reflection into times of painful doubt. He questioned everything: his choices, his relationship with Emily, and even his own ability to protect the people he loved. He replayed conversations, searching for missed signs or hidden clues. He wondered if he had misread her moods, failed to notice her worries, or overlooked something important that might have prevented her disappearance. These thoughts haunted him, and yet they were interwoven with memories of the woman he loved, reminding him of what was truly at stake. In the solitude of his office, Jackson often reviewed photographs of Emily. He would run his fingers over her smile, the sparkle in her eyes, the way her hair fell across her shoulders, and he would imagine the life they had planned together. Each photo was a mixture of comfort and heartache, a reminder of both love and loss. Sometimes he would speak aloud to her, recounting the events of the day, hoping that somehow, somewhere, she might hear him. His voice echoed in the empty office, and though he knew it was impossible, it offered a small measure of solace, a way to maintain connection in the absence of answers. Jackson's search took him far beyond the familiar boundaries of his ranch and town. He traveled to neighboring cities, small towns, and even rural counties where Emily had once mentioned friends or acquaintances. He met with locals, asking questions, following hunches, and examining every possibility. Often he returned with nothing, the information useless or the leads dead. Yet, each journey reaffirmed his commitment to finding her. Giving up was never an option. He could bear exhaustion, frustration, and disappointment, but he could not bear the thought of abandoning the woman he loved. Even in the face of failure, Jackson discovered strengths within himself he had never fully realized. His patience deepened, his observation skills sharpened, and his determination grew stronger. He learned to read subtle clues in interviews, to notice inconsistencies in statements, and to recognize patterns others overlooked. Each small insight, each minor breakthrough, offered hope that he was moving closer to the truth, even if the path remained uncertain. It was a humbling process, teaching him that success in life was not measured by wealth alone but by resilience, compassion, and persistence. While the search consumed his days, Jackson also felt the emptiness of human connection more acutely. Friends visited, offered advice, or tried to cheer him up, but he often pushed them away, feeling that no one could truly understand the depth of his concern. Conversations with family were polite but strained, overshadowed by the unspoken tension surrounding Emily's absence. Even his employees at the ranch noticed the change in him. The quiet moments of distraction, the nights spent working alone, and the persistent weight of worry that seemed to shadow every decision he made. The turning point in Jackson's emotional journey came in the quiet hours of the night. Sitting by the fire, he realized that he had been holding himself back from feeling fully, from experiencing the depth of loss and hope that defined this period of his life. He allowed himself to grieve openly, to cry in solitude, and to admit that the uncertainty had left a mark on him. This acceptance did not weaken him. Instead, it strengthened his resolve. He understood that acknowledging pain was not a sign of defeat, but a necessary step in the pursuit of truth and the hope of reunion. Even as despair lingered, Jackson found moments of unexpected joy in small things: the sunrise over the ranch, the laughter of children in the town, or the quiet companionship of his horses. These moments reminded him that life continued around him, that hope could exist even in darkness, and that love was worth the struggle. Each day, he rode with renewed focus, spoke with investigators with renewed attention, and reviewed every detail with renewed determination. Though the search was far from over, Jackson had discovered a deeper purpose: to continue relentlessly, not just for himself, but for Emily, wherever she might be. In those months of searching, Jackson also reflected on the lessons life had forced upon him. He realized that love was not just about presence or convenience, but about commitment, patience, and faith in the face of uncertainty. He understood that life could change in an instant, that even the strongest plans could be disrupted, and that resilience was essential. These realizations shaped him, transforming his grief into motivation and his fear into determination. Though the town and media continued to speculate, Jackson focused solely on the truth. Each lead, each tip, each piece of information was a step closer to understanding Emily's disappearance. The journey was exhausting, emotionally draining, and sometimes discouraging, but he refused to let fatigue or doubt slow him. He had learned that the path to answers was rarely straightforward, and that perseverance often required patience, courage, and unwavering faith in one's own convictions. As the 15th month drew to a close, Jackson felt both weariness and determination. He had endured countless disappointments, navigated relentless scrutiny, and confronted his own fears and doubts. Yet, he had never given up. The bond he shared with Emily, the love that had brought them together, remained intact. He knew that life had more to reveal, that the next moment could change everything, and that hope, though fragile, was powerful. Riding across his ranch under the vast Texas sky, Jackson often whispered Emily's name, imagining her somewhere beyond the horizon. Each whisper was a promise to himself, a promise to continue searching, to continue hoping, and to continue believing that one day the mystery would be solved. The journey had been long, difficult, and full of uncertainty, but it had also revealed the strength, resilience, and unwavering love within him. No matter what lay ahead, Jackson knew he would face it with courage, patience, and an open heart. Jackson Cole had spent 15 months chasing shadows, following dead ends, and living with a constant, gnawing worry that Emily had vanished forever. Every day had been a test of patience, hope, and endurance. Yet, even in the depths of his despair, he never imagined the moment that would turn his life upside down completely. A single letter that arrived one ordinary morning, quiet and unassuming, yet carrying news that would change everything he thought he knew. It was a Wednesday when the letter arrived. Jackson was sitting at his mahogany desk, reviewing a report from one of his ranch managers, when a courier quietly handed him a thick envelope. There was no return address, only his name in careful, familiar handwriting that made his heart pause. The envelope felt heavier than usual in his hands, and an unusual sense of foreboding settled over him. Something about it seemed different, not threatening, but important, urgent in a way he could feel deep in his chest. With cautious fingers, Jackson opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, written neatly on plain stationery. The first line made him stop in his tracks. "Sir, you were named as the father." He read it again, slower this time, as if the words might transform into something else. They didn't. They were real, undeniable, and filled with questions, emotions, and consequences he had never expected. Shock hit him first. His mind raced through every possibility, every scenario, every unanswered question. Named as the father. How? Why had Emily kept this from him? Who had she trusted with this secret, and where was the child now? He felt a strange mixture of fear, disbelief, and an urgent need for answers. His hands trembled slightly as he continued reading, each sentence revealing fragments of a story he had not known. Emily had given birth shortly before her disappearance. The child had been placed under the care of someone she trusted completely, a decision she had made to protect both the baby and Jackson. Jackson sank back into his chair, the letter clutched in his hands, and tried to process what he had just learned. All the frustration, the exhaustion, and the grief of the past 15 months collided with this new, unexpected reality. A child, his child, existed in the world, tied to him by blood and love, yet kept hidden for reasons he could not fully understand. He felt a rush of emotions, excitement, fear, anger, and an overwhelming sense of responsibility. The thought that Emily had carried this burden alone, making decisions without him, weighed heavily on him. The letter continued to explain that Emily had chosen to disappear to protect the child from the attention Jackson's wealth and public life could attract. She feared that his fame, his business dealings, and the media scrutiny surrounding him could put the child at risk. Her decision, though painful for Jackson, had been made out of love and a desire to ensure safety. Reading those words, he felt a mixture of sorrow and admiration. He understood the reasoning, but the secrecy and absence were still hard to accept. He wished he could have been there, that he could have shared the responsibility and the joy of parenthood from the start. Jackson spent the rest of the morning rereading the letter, piecing together the fragments of Emily's choices. He learned about the child's current guardian, a trusted friend of Emily's who had promised to care for the baby until Jackson was ready to be involved. There were instructions, hints, and gentle requests in the letter, guiding him on how to proceed without causing harm or unnecessary disruption. Each detail was carefully considered, reflecting Emily's thoughtful, protective nature. Jackson realized that, Even in her absence, Emily had been thinking of him and their future in ways he had never imagined. Emotionally, Jackson was in turmoil. He had spent over a year consumed by worry, uncertainty, and a desperate search for Emily. Now, the landscape of his life had shifted entirely. The child's existence was both a shock and a blessing, a revelation that brought hope, but also an immense weight of responsibility. He had to navigate this new reality carefully, balancing his desire to connect with the child with the need to respect Emily's choices and the guardian's role. The delicate nature of the situation demanded patience, tact, and deep emotional resilience. For hours, Jackson sat quietly, staring at the envelope, the letter, and the words that had changed everything. Memories of Emily flooded his mind, her laughter, her gentle touch, the way she had looked at him with love and trust. He thought of the times they had planned a family together, the dreams they had shared, and the life they had imagined. Now those dreams were intertwined with a reality he had never anticipated, a child he had yet to meet, born in secrecy, and kept away for reasons he would only slowly understand. Despite the shock, Jackson felt a surge of determination. He would find the child. He would learn everything he could about the guardian and the circumstances surrounding the birth. He would do whatever was necessary to ensure the child's safety, health, and happiness. But he also understood that his approach needed to be careful, measured, and respectful. This was not a matter of wealth or power. It was a matter of love, trust, and family. The delicate balance between protecting and intruding weighed heavily on him, yet he knew that he could not let fear or uncertainty prevent him from stepping into his role as a father. Jackson reached out to the investigator he trusted most, briefing him on the situation. The investigator promised discretion, professionalism, and a careful approach. Jackson emphasized that this was a matter of family and trust, not a sensational story for the media or the public. Every action needed to be measured, every decision thoughtful. The stakes were higher than anything he had ever faced in his business dealings, yet he felt ready, motivated by a love that had never waned despite the long months of separation and uncertainty. In the days that followed, Jackson began to make careful plans. He wrote letters, made phone calls, and slowly pieced together the steps he would need to take to meet the child. Each step brought anticipation, anxiety, and hope. He envisioned holding the baby for the first time, feeling the tiny hands, seeing Emily's eyes reflected in the child, and finally connecting with a part of Emily that had been hidden from him for so long. The thought was overwhelming in its intensity, yet it filled him with a renewed sense of purpose and direction. Jackson also reflected deeply on Emily's choices. He realized the courage it must have taken for her to disappear, to carry the child in secret, and to trust someone else with their care. He felt a mixture of guilt and gratitude, understanding the sacrifices she had made for their child's safety and well-being. Though he had felt abandoned for 15 months, he now recognized that Emily had acted out of love, protecting both him and the child from potential danger. This realization softened the anger and frustration he had carried for so long, replacing it with a sense of respect and empathy that deepened his understanding of her character. As the days passed, Jackson's anticipation grew. Every thought, every action, every plan was centered around the child. He imagined the first meeting, the first words, the first shared moments of connection. He rehearsed conversations in his mind, prepared for questions he might face, and contemplated the best way to approach the guardian with care and respect. Each detail mattered, and Jackson approached them with the same precision, thoughtfulness, and patience he had always applied to challenges in his life. But this was different. This was not about business, wealth, or power. It was about love, responsibility, and family. Finally, one evening, Jackson sat by the fireplace, letter in hand, reflecting on the transformation that had occurred in his heart. The shock of the news had given way to purpose, and the despair of 15 months had been replaced with determination. He knew that the path ahead would not be easy. There would be questions, emotional hurdles, and moments of doubt. Yet he felt ready, strengthened by the love he had for Emily, the bond he now knew existed with the child, and the deep commitment to do what was right. That night, as he stared into the dancing flames, Jackson whispered Emily's name, imagining her watching over their child, wherever she was. The quiet room, the soft crackle of fire, and the stillness of the night became a sanctuary, a space where hope, love, and determination could flourish. He knew the next steps would be difficult, but he also knew that nothing in his life had ever mattered more. The letter had changed everything, and with it, Jackson was ready to face a future filled with love, responsibility, and the promise of reunion. Jackson Cole had read and reread the letter countless times, yet each reading brought new thoughts, new questions, and a deeper understanding of the complexity of Emily's decisions. He now knew that her disappearance had not been an abandonment, but a choice made to protect their child from the pressures of his public life and wealth. Still, knowing this did not make the task ahead any easier. He had to navigate a delicate path, connecting with the child, understanding Emily's decisions, and gaining the trust of the guardian who had cared for the baby for over a year. Every step demanded patience, respect, and careful planning. The first step was gathering information. Jackson relied on the investigator he trusted most, someone who had worked quietly and efficiently on Emily's case from the beginning. Together, they began piecing together details about the child's life, the daily routines, the caregivers, and the environment Emily had chosen. The guardian, it turned out, was a close family friend of Emily's, someone she had known since childhood and someone she trusted completely. This choice made Jackson feel a mix of relief and gratitude. If anyone could ensure the child's safety while keeping Emily's wishes intact, it was this person. Yet, the closer Jackson came to uncovering the truth, the more nervous he became. He had imagined this moment for months, perhaps years, meeting the child he had never seen, stepping into a role he had been unaware of, and connecting with a part of Emily's life that had been kept from him. Now, the reality was closer than ever, and the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on his shoulders. He wanted everything to be perfect, to approach the situation with care, and to honor Emily's decisions. But he also feared that he might do something wrong, something that could damage the fragile trust that had been maintained for over a year. Jackson began writing letters of his own, not to be sent immediately, but as a way to organize his thoughts and emotions. He wrote about the hopes he had for the child, the respect he had for Emily's choices, and the love he already felt. These letters were both practice and therapy, a way to prepare for the conversations ahead. Each word reflected his sincerity, his caution, and his determination to act in the child's best interest. It was a humbling experience, realizing that parenthood required more than wealth or influence. It demanded patience, empathy, and unwavering commitment. Finally, after weeks of preparation, Jackson was ready to meet the guardian. The meeting was arranged carefully, in a neutral, private location. The guardian greeted him with warmth but also a quiet caution, aware that Jackson's intentions, though sincere, had to be proven through actions, not words. Jackson listened more than he spoke, asking questions, showing genuine interest in the child's well-being, and expressing his respect for the care that had been provided. The conversation was a turning point. He began to understand the depth of Emily's planning and the care with which she had navigated the child's first months of life. Over time, the guardian allowed Jackson to gradually meet the child. At first, the encounters were brief, cautious, and guided by the guardian's careful instructions. Jackson observed quietly, learning the child's habits, interests, and personality. Each small interaction was a mixture of awe, nervousness, and tenderness. He had imagined this moment countless times, Yet the reality was both overwhelming and profoundly beautiful. Seeing a part of Emily in the child, her eyes, her smile, her curiosity, evoked emotions Jackson had not fully anticipated. Love, joy, and a deep sense of responsibility that anchored him in ways nothing else ever had. During these visits, Jackson also learned about the challenges Emily had faced before her disappearance. He discovered that she had been under immense pressure, balancing her career, personal safety concerns, and the intense scrutiny that came with being associated with him. Emily had feared that the attention surrounding him could endanger the child, a fear that now seemed justified given the public interest in their lives. Understanding her fears brought Jackson a mix of sorrow and respect. He realized the courage it had taken for Emily to act as she did, making difficult decisions for the protection of their child, and trusting that he would step into the role of father when the time was right. As Jackson spent more time with the child, his connection grew stronger. He learned the small things, the way the child's eyes lit up at new discoveries, the soft laughter, and the curiosity that mirrored Emily's own nature. Each interaction reinforced his sense of purpose and responsibility. Jackson began to plan a life that included the child, imagining days filled with learning, laughter, and shared experiences. The connection was slow and careful, but it was real, tangible, and filled with potential. Jackson also faced his own emotional challenges during this time. The reunion with the child brought immense joy, but it also reignited feelings of grief and loss. Grief for the months spent apart from Emily and the child, loss for the milestones he had missed, and the knowledge that these months could never be regained. Yet he understood that dwelling on the past would not serve anyone. Instead, he focused on the present, on building trust, and on creating a safe and loving environment for the child. Each day was an exercise in patience, understanding, and emotional resilience. He began imagining a future where the child would grow up knowing the love of both parents, even if Emily remained distant for now. He reflected on what kind of father he wanted to be, someone present, patient, and protective, who could balance the demands of wealth and public attention with the intimacy and attention a child deserved. These reflections shaped his actions, guiding him in every interaction and decision. Jackson realized that being a father was not about controlling every moment, but about being there consistently, providing stability, love, and guidance in a world that could be unpredictable and challenging. During this period, Jackson also reconnected with memories of Emily. The stories she had shared, the dreams she had confided in him, and the love they had built together became sources of guidance and inspiration. He imagined Emily watching over the child, proud of the care and attention he was providing. This mental image strengthened his resolve, reminding him that every decision he made was part of a larger journey, a journey that included love, trust, and the hope of eventual reunion. Gradually, Jackson found himself feeling more grounded. The despair and uncertainty that had dominated the past 15 months began to be replaced by purpose and determination. He no longer felt helpless. Instead, he felt capable of protecting and nurturing the child. The bond he was forming, though fragile and new, gave him strength. He realized that life had provided him with an opportunity, not just to be a father, but to honor Emily's choices, to demonstrate love and responsibility, and to create a meaningful connection that could endure despite the challenges they had faced. The guardian, observing Jackson's dedication, slowly allowed more access and involvement. Jackson participated in daily routines, learning how to care for the child, understanding preferences and behaviors, and building trust through consistent presence. Each small success reinforced his commitment and deepened the emotional connection. He understood that trust could not be rushed. It had to be earned through patience, reliability, and genuine care, and he was willing to do whatever it took. Jackson also began planning for the day he would reunite with Emily. He understood that their reunion would be complicated, emotional, and potentially challenging. Yet he approached it with a careful mindset, respecting the time, space, and decisions Emily had made. He reflected on how far they had come, through absence, uncertainty, and separation, and realized that the foundation of trust, love, and responsibility had been established. When the moment came, he hoped it would be met with understanding, reconciliation, and the shared joy of family. By the end of this period, Jackson had transformed. The despair of the past 15 months had been replaced by focus, determination, and hope. He had stepped into the role of father with care and dedication, navigated the complexities of Emily's choices, and built a connection with the child that was grounded in love and responsibility. He understood that life would continue to present challenges, but he also knew that he had grown, learned, and prepared himself to face whatever came next. In quiet moments, sitting alone after a long day, Jackson would reflect on the journey so far. He thought about Emily, the child, and the intricate web of decisions that had brought them to this point. Though questions remained, uncertainty lingered, and challenges were still ahead, he felt a sense of peace. He was no longer helpless, no longer consumed solely by worry. Instead, he was an active participant in shaping the life of the child and preparing for the eventual reunion with Emily. The experience had tested him, changed him, and strengthened him in ways he had never imagined. As he gazed out over the ranch, the sun setting in brilliant shades of orange and pink, Jackson felt a renewed sense of purpose. The path ahead was still uncertain, but he knew that love, patience, and dedication would guide him. He had been given a second chance, not only to be a father but to honor the love and sacrifices of Emily, to build a life filled with trust and connection, and to create a family rooted in care, understanding, and hope. And for the first time in 15 months, Jackson truly believed that the future held the possibility of happiness, reunion, and the fulfillment of the dreams they had once shared. After months of uncertainty, searching, and careful planning, Jackson Cole finally felt ready for the moment he had been imagining for over a year, the day he would fully step into his role as a father. Though he had already spent time with the child under the careful supervision of the guardian, he knew that a deeper connection awaited him. The anticipation was both thrilling and nerve-wracking. He had spent so long hoping for this day, imagining how it might feel to hold the child, to hear the laughter, and to witness the small gestures that made up everyday life. Yet he also knew that patience was key. Trust could not be rushed, and love had to be nurtured slowly. Jackson's first real, extended visit with the child took place on a quiet afternoon. The guardian had carefully prepared the environment, ensuring that everything was familiar and comforting. Jackson arrived early, riding across the ranch with a mixture of excitement and nervous energy. He carried with him small gifts, soft blankets, toys, and books he had selected personally. They were gestures of love, care, and thoughtfulness, meant to show the child that he was present and reliable. As he approached, he felt his heart race, a strange combination of fear and joy. The child ran toward him cautiously at first, curiosity mingled with shyness. Jackson knelt down to meet the child at eye level, speaking in a calm, gentle voice. "Hi, I'm Jackson. I've been waiting to meet you," he said. The words felt strange coming from him, yet they were true. The child paused for a moment, studying him, then smiled, a small, tentative smile that reached the eyes. That smile was like sunlight breaking through clouds, warming Jackson's heart and easing some of the anxiety that had weighed on him for so long. Over the next few hours, Jackson allowed the child to take the lead, letting curiosity guide their interaction. They played together, read books, and explored the garden. Every laugh, every question, and every small gesture of affection strengthened the bond between them. Jackson marveled at the child's intelligence, curiosity, and gentle nature. He saw flashes of Emily in their eyes, the same kindness and warmth that had drawn him to her in the first place. The connection was immediate, undeniable, and profoundly moving. For the first time in 15 months, Jackson felt a sense of completeness, a feeling that life was aligning in ways he had long hoped for. During these visits, Jackson also learned more about Emily's choices and the reasons she had made for keeping the child's existence secret. He listened carefully to the guardian's stories, discovering the care, planning, and love Emily had put into every decision. Emily had acted out of concern for safety, privacy, and the child's well-being, ensuring that the first months of life were stable and nurturing. Jackson felt a mix of gratitude, respect, and a tinge of sorrow for the time lost. He understood her motivations and forgave the absence, recognizing that love sometimes required difficult choices and sacrifices. The relationship between Jackson and the child deepened gradually. He became involved in daily routines, feeding, reading, exploring, and playing. Each interaction taught him more about patience, empathy, and unconditional love. He learned to anticipate needs, interpret small gestures, and offer comfort when necessary. Every success, every smile, every moment of connection reinforced his commitment to being a present, reliable, and nurturing father. Jackson realized that fatherhood was not about wealth or status, but about consistency, care, and emotional availability. While the bond with the child grew, Jackson also reflected on his relationship with Emily. The letter, the guardian's guidance, and the glimpses of the child's personality reminded him of the woman he had loved so deeply. He imagined her watching over them, proud of the care and dedication he was showing. He understood that their eventual reunion would be emotional, complicated, and potentially challenging, yet he felt ready. He had learned patience, humility, and the importance of trust, lessons that would guide him when he finally saw Emily again. The day of reunion arrived months later, a day Jackson had envisioned countless times in his mind. Emily had agreed to meet him, along with the child, in a quiet and private setting arranged by the guardian. Jackson's heart pounded with anticipation, fear, and hope. He rehearsed the words he would say, yet he knew that nothing could fully prepare him for the emotions he would feel upon seeing Emily again. He rode to the meeting place early, ensuring everything was perfect, calm, and welcoming. When Emily arrived, Jackson felt a rush of emotions. Love, relief, sorrow, and gratitude all mixed together. She looked as he remembered, yet the past 15 months had changed both of them. They approached each other cautiously, aware of the time lost but also aware of the enduring bond that had always existed. Jackson took a deep breath, reaching out to take her hand, and said simply, "I've missed you." The words were raw, honest, and filled with emotion. Emily's eyes glistened, reflecting the same mixture of feelings he had anticipated, and she smiled, a smile that spoke of forgiveness, understanding, and love. The child, sensing the connection between Jackson and Emily, ran between them, laughter spilling into the quiet afternoon. Jackson knelt down, picking up the child gently, holding them close as Emily watched. In that moment, the family felt complete, a circle closed after months of uncertainty. The joy of reunion, the warmth of love, and the peace of shared understanding filled the space around them. Jackson realized that every moment of waiting, searching, and uncertainty had led to this precise, beautiful moment. Over the following days and weeks, Jackson, Emily, and the child spent time together, rebuilding bonds and creating routines as a family. Jackson learned the delicate balance of co-parenting, listening, and supporting Emily while also establishing his presence as a father. They shared meals, laughter, and quiet moments, discovering the rhythm of life together. Every small success, every shared smile, every gesture of love reinforced the sense of family that had long been missing. Jackson felt a deep, abiding joy, knowing that the child would grow up surrounded by love, care, and connection. Jackson also reflected on how much he had grown during the months of uncertainty. The absence of Emily and the child had taught him patience, resilience, and the depth of his own love. He had learned to navigate fear, disappointment, and hope simultaneously, and these lessons strengthened his ability to be a present, empathetic, and reliable parent. The journey had been difficult, but it had prepared him for the responsibilities and joys of fatherhood in a way nothing else could. Emily and Jackson also took time to discuss the past, sharing their experiences, emotions, and choices. They spoke of the fear, the love, and the sacrifices that had defined the months of separation. Each conversation brought them closer, allowing understanding, forgiveness, and renewed trust to flourish. They discovered that despite the absence, the foundation of their relationship remained strong, a foundation built on love, respect, and shared hope for the future. As the weeks turned into months, Jackson fully embraced his role as a father. He participated in milestones, celebrations, and everyday moments, each one strengthening the bond with the child. He guided, nurtured, and protected, always mindful of Emily's trust and the lessons learned during their months apart. The child, in turn, responded with affection, curiosity, and love, forming a connection that was both natural and profound. Jackson felt a deep sense of fulfillment, realizing that the moments of doubt and despair had led him to this joy. In quiet moments, Jackson reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. From Emily's sudden disappearance to the shocking letter, the months of searching, and the careful navigation of trust and emotions, every step had shaped him into the man and father he had become. He understood that life could be unpredictable, that love sometimes required difficult decisions, and that patience, courage, and compassion were essential to building a meaningful family. Finally, Jackson realized that the journey was not just about reunion but about growth. He had learned to love unconditionally, to forgive, to trust, and to cherish the small moments that make life meaningful. The presence of the child and the reunion with Emily had transformed him, bringing purpose, joy, and fulfillment in ways he had never imagined. He felt ready to face the future, knowing that the family they had rebuilt together could endure challenges, celebrate triumphs, and create memories that would last a lifetime. As the sun set over the ranch one peaceful evening, Jackson stood with Emily and the child by his side, watching the horizon bathed in golden light. The past 15 months of uncertainty, fear, and longing had given way to hope, love, and connection. Jackson felt a quiet gratitude for Emily, for their child, and for the lessons learned along the way. He knew that life would continue to present challenges, but he also knew that together as a family, they could face anything. In that moment, Jackson understood the true meaning of love, family, and resilience. He had waited, hoped, and persevered, and now he held in his arms the greatest gift life could offer, a family reunited, a child loved, and a future filled with promise. The journey had been long, difficult, and emotional, but it had led to this moment of peace, joy, and fulfillment. Jackson smiled, knowing that the story of their lives had entered a new chapter, one defined by love, trust, and the enduring bond of family.